The sound of shattering glass echoed through our kitchen, followed by an eerie silence that seemed to last forever. I stood there, frozen, staring at the remains of what used to be our wedding china scattered across the hardwood floor. The pot roast I'd spent hours preparing lay in ruins among the ceramic shards, a fitting metaphor for my marriage. My name is Clara, and this was the moment I realized my husband Wyatt had become a stranger. Jesus Christ, Clara? Wyatt's voice cut through the silence. That was my mother's china. Do you have any idea how much that set was worth? I watched him pace, his perfectly pressed suit somehow untouched by the mess at our feet. The same suit he'd been wearing more and more lately, coming home later and later each night. The handle was loose, I said quietly, though we both knew that wasn't the whole truth. My hands had been shaking when I lifted the dish, just like they'd been shaking all week since I'd found that email on his laptop. Maybe if you spent more time practicing basic skills instead of snooping through my things, we wouldn't be having these accidents. His words dripped with condescension, but it was the slight smirk that made my stomach turn. I wasn't snooping, I lied, matching his tone. The email was right there when I was checking our flight details for your mother's birthday dinner. Wyatt's face twitched. What email? The one about the merger. I kept my voice steady, watching his reaction. The one where you discussed selling Carter Innovations, my former company, right out from under Leo. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're being paranoid, Clara. Business is complicated. You wouldn't understand. It's been, 2 years since you've worked? 3. I corrected, feeling the familiar sting of his reminder. Since you convinced me to quit and focus on our future. Wyatt stepped carefully around the mess, straightening his tie. I have a late meeting. Clean this up before my mother comes over tomorrow. And Clara? He paused at the doorway. Stay out of my emails. Trust goes both ways in a marriage. The front door closed with a soft click that felt louder than the shattering china. I knelt down and began picking up the pieces, my mind racing. 3 years ago, I was a senior project manager at Carter Innovations. Now I was on my knees, cleaning up a mess while my husband plotted to destroy my mentor's company. My phone buzzed on the counter, a message from Sadie. Drinks tomorrow? Got something you need to hear. I looked at the shattered china, then at my reflection in the window. Something had to change. And maybe Sadie's message was exactly the sign I needed. I spent the morning scrubbing imaginary spots off Evelyn's antique serving dishes, trying to make them sparkle before she arrived for her weekly inspection. The familiar click of her designer heels on our front porch made my shoulders tense even before she walked through the door. Clara, darling. Evelyn's voice carried that artificial sweetness that always made my teeth ache. I brought those cleaning supplies I mentioned, the ones that actually work. I forced a smile, watching her perfectly manicured hands place a bag on my counter. The same counter I'd just spent an hour polishing. Thank you, Evelyn. But I already have. Oh, and these came for you. She pulled out a stack of mail from her purse. They were delivered to our house by mistake. Really, Clara, you should update your resume address. It's been 3 years since you worked at... What was that little company? My heart stopped. Resume? I hadn't sent out any resumes. Carter Innovations, I corrected, trying to keep my voice steady. May I see those? She held them just out of reach. Wyatt mentioned you might be getting restless. But surely you understand that my son needs a proper home to come back to after his long days at the office. Speaking of which, did you hear about his latest deal? The pride in her voice made my stomach turn. I wondered if she knew about the merger, about what Wyatt was planning to do to Leo's company. My phone buzzed. Sadie again. Meeting confirmed for tomorrow. Bringing someone you need to talk to. Clara? Evelyn's sharp tone snapped me back. Are you even listening? I was saying how Wyatt's working so hard to provide for you. The least you could do is show some appreciation. I grabbed a dish towel, twisting it in my hands. Of course. I appreciate everything Wyatt does. Then why are you sending out resumes? I'm not, I said truthfully. I haven't sent any resumes. Evelyn's perfectly lined lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, someone has. Using your credentials. Interesting, isn't it? She laid the envelopes on the counter. Responses from 3 major tech companies, all addressed to me. Someone was applying for jobs in my name. But who? And why? I should call Wyatt, Evelyn said, already pulling out her phone. No. I grabbed her wrist, surprising us both. I mean, he's in meetings all day. Important ones. I'll talk to him tonight. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Yes, you certainly will. After she left, I stared at the envelopes, my mind racing. Someone was making moves in my name, either trying to help me or set me up. Tomorrow's meeting with Sadie couldn't come soon enough. The cafe where I met Sadie was packed with the lunch crowd, but I spotted her immediately. Same confident smile, same perfectly styled hair. What I didn't expect was who sat beside her. Leo. I nearly dropped my purse. My former boss looked exactly as I remembered him, down to his trademark navy blazer and kind eyes. Hello, Clara. He stood to pull out my chair. Sadie thought it was time we talked. My hands shook as I sat down. About the resumes someone's been sending out in my name? Among other things, Sadie said, sliding a folder across the table. Like how your husband's planning to orchestrate a hostile takeover of Carter Innovations. The world tilted sideways. I'd suspected something from the emails, but hearing it confirmed made my stomach lurch. We've been tracking unusual stock movements, Leo explained quietly. Someone's been quietly buying up shares through shell companies. Then yesterday, we received an anonymous tip about Wyatt's involvement. I didn't know, I whispered. I saw an email, but... We know you didn't know, Sadie cut in. That's why we're here. Those job applications? That was me. I needed to create a paper trail showing you were looking for work before all this breaks. My phone buzzed Wyatt. I silenced it, my hand trembling. Why would he do this? I asked, but Leo's expression told me he knew exactly why. Your husband's firm is struggling, Clara. They need a big win to stay afloat. Taking over Carter Innovations would save them and destroy everything I've built. Another text from Wyatt. Where are you? Mother said you're acting strange. We need to talk. He's going to know I met with you, I said, panic rising in my throat. Good. Sadie's voice was steel. Let him know. You're not his prisoner, Clara. You're the key to stopping this. How? Leo leaned forward. You still own shares in Carter Innovations, the ones I gave you before you left. Wyatt doesn't know about them because they're in your maiden name. With those shares and your insider knowledge of his plans. We can stop him, I finished, understanding dawning. But he's my husband. Is he? Sadie asked softly. Or is he the man who manipulated you into giving up your career, isolated you from your friends, and is now trying to destroy your mentor's company? My phone buzzed again. This time a text from Evelyn. Wyatt's worried sick. What kind of wife makes her husband worry like this? I looked at the message, then at Leo and Sadie. 3 years of suppressed anger and resentment crystallized into something harder, colder. Tell me what you need me to do. Walking into our house that evening felt like entering enemy territory. Wyatt stood in the kitchen, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up, a pose that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made my skin crawl. Where were you? His voice was carefully controlled. Too controlled. Having lunch with Sadie. Not a lie, just not the whole truth. The folder Leo had given me felt heavy in my purse. Really? Wyatt loosened his tie. Because I had the most interesting call from Thompson and Burke today. Apparently, you interviewed there last week. My breath caught. Sadie's fake paper trail had worked too well. I can explain. Can you explain this too? He slid his laptop across the counter. On the screen was an email from Leo to the Carter Innovations board, dated that afternoon. My name was mentioned. Multiple times. You're spying on Leo's emails? The words came out before I could stop them. Wyatt's laugh was sharp. That's what concerns you. Not the fact that you're conspiring with my competition. Conspiring? I gripped the counter. Like you're conspiring to destroy his company? The silence that followed was deafening. Wyatt's face went through a series of emotions before settling on something dangerous. You have no idea what you're talking about. He stepped closer. Do you know what Leo Carter did to my father? How he stole his clients, drove him out of business? What? Of course you don't. You were too busy being Leo's perfect protege to see who he really is. Wyatt's voice cracked. My father died thinking he was a failure because of that man. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I'd never known how Wyatt's father died. He never talked about it. That doesn't justify. It justifies everything. His fist slammed the counter. I've spent years planning this, Clara. Years. And now you're going to ruin it because you're bored playing housewife. My phone buzzed, Sadie's name flashing on the screen. Wyatt saw it too. Don't answer that. It wasn't a request. I reached for the phone anyway. Wyatt grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. Think very carefully about your next move, he said quietly. There's more at stake here than you realize. I looked at his hand on my wrist, then at his face, this stranger wearing my husband's features. The phone kept buzzing. You're right, I said, meeting his eyes. There is. I pulled away and grabbed my purse, already moving toward the door. Behind me, Wyatt's voice carried a note I'd never heard before: fear. Clara, if you walk out that door. I didn't stay to hear the rest. The January ice made every step treacherous as I hurried toward Sadie's car, parked 2 blocks away. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I left the house. Wyatt, Evelyn, even numbers I didn't recognize. I never saw the patch of black ice. The world tilted sideways, then up, then everything went dark for a moment. When my vision cleared, I was staring at the night sky, my head throbbing and something warm trickling down my face. Oh my God, Clara. Sadie's voice seemed far away. Don't move, I'm calling an ambulance. No hospital. I tried to sit up, but the world spun. Wyatt will. Wyatt will what? A new voice cut through the night. Evelyn stood over me, her silhouette sharp against the streetlights. Find out his wife is sneaking around behind his back? How did you? I followed you. She knelt beside me, her perfume suffocating. I've been watching you for days. Did you really think you could destroy my son's chance at revenge without me noticing? My head throbbed harder. His revenge is wrong. Wrong. Evelyn laughed. Leo Carter destroyed my husband. Now he's trying to take my son too, using you as his puppet. Again. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance. Sadie stood between us, phone still in hand. Back off, Evelyn. You don't know what Wyatt's really doing. I know everything. Evelyn's voice turned to steel. Including what's in that folder you're carrying, Clara. The one with all the evidence against Wyatt's takeover plan. My blood went cold. The folder was still in my purse, now lying several feet away on the icy sidewalk. Don't, I warned, but Evelyn was already moving toward it. Sadie got there first, snatching the purse. Touch her things and I'll have you arrested for assault. Assault? Evelyn's laugh was brittle. Look at her, she slipped on ice. Isn't that right, Clara? The ambulance rounded the corner, its lights painting everything in surreal reds and blues. My phone buzzed again, Leo's name on the screen. Clara. Evelyn's voice dropped low. Think about what you're doing. This evidence, these accusations, they won't just hurt Wyatt. They'll destroy our whole family. Is that what you want? The paramedics were approaching. I had seconds to decide. What I want, I said, tasting blood from my split lip, is the truth. About everything. I grabbed my phone and answered Leo's call, watching Evelyn's face contort with rage. Leo, I'm heading to Memorial Hospital. Bring whatever you have on Wyatt's father. It's time we all knew what really happened. The paramedics reached us just as Evelyn's mask finally cracked, revealing something desperate and dangerous underneath. I'd never seen her look more like her son. The hospital room felt too bright, too sterile as Leo spread old documents across my bedside table. My head throbbed beneath the bandages, but the truth hurt more than any concussion. Your father-in-law wasn't driven to bankruptcy, Leo said quietly. He embezzled millions from his clients, then tried to frame me for it when the authorities got close. I stared at the court documents, the bank statements, the suicide note. Wyatt doesn't know. No. Evelyn made sure he believed a different story. Leo's voice carried years of buried pain. I kept quiet to protect his family's reputation. Maybe that was a mistake. The door burst open. Wyatt stood there, still in his suit, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His eyes locked onto Leo. Get out, he snarled. Wyatt, please, I started. You too, Clara. His voice cracked. Pack your things and get out of our house. I've already called my lawyer. She's not going anywhere. Sadie stepped between us. Not until you see these. She thrust the documents at him. Wyatt's hands shook as he read, his face draining of color. These are lies, he whispered, but I could see the doubt creeping in. My father was a good man. Your father was troubled, Leo said gently. But he loved you. Everything he did, even the fraud, was to give you the life he thought you deserved. Shut up. Wyatt hurled the papers across the room. You don't get to talk about him. Either of you. He turned to me, and for a moment I saw the boy he must have been when his father died, lost, angry, desperate for someone to blame. I trusted you, he said. You were supposed to be on my side. I am on your side, I replied. That's why I couldn't let you destroy yourself with this revenge plot. Destroy myself? He laughed bitterly. I've already done that. The SEC is investigating our firm. Someone leaked documents about the takeover attempt. We're finished. My heart stopped. Wyatt, I didn't. Save it. He pulled out his phone, showing me an email. Your friend Sadie here did it. Right after you fell. Guess she thought I wouldn't notice her copying the files from your purse while we waited for the ambulance. I looked at Sadie, who met my gaze steadily. You had the evidence, Clara. But you weren't going to use it. Someone had to. The monitor beside my bed beeped faster as my pulse raced. Everything was falling apart, and I couldn't tell who was protecting whom anymore. "Get out," I whispered. "All of you." One by one they left, leaving me alone with the scattered papers and the wreckage of too many lives built on lies. Outside my window, snow began to fall, covering everything in silent white. The storm hit just as I was leaving the hospital, turning the highway into a blur of headlights and sleet. My rental car sputtered once, twice, then died completely, coasting to a stop on the shoulder. Perfect. Through the windshield, I could see Wyatt's office building looming in the distance, its lights still burning despite the late hour. The SEC would be there tomorrow morning. Everything would change. A tap on my window made me jump. Leo stood there, snow collecting on his shoulders. "Need a ride?" I hesitated, then grabbed my purse and documents. As we drove toward the city, Leo broke the silence. "Wyatt's in his office. Security called, said he's been there all night shredding files." My stomach dropped. "He's destroying evidence." "Not just that." Leo's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "He's trying to transfer everything to offshore accounts before the investigation starts. If he succeeds, then everyone loses everything. Again." I pulled out my phone, staring at Wyatt's last text. "I'm fixing this. Don't try to stop me." "We should call the authorities," Leo suggested. "No." I straightened up. "Take me to his office." The security guard recognized me, letting us up without question. Through the glass walls of Wyatt's office, I could see him hunched over his computer, surrounded by scattered papers and empty coffee cups. He didn't look up when I entered. "Come to watch the end? Come to stop you from making it worse." "Worse?" He laughed hollowly. "My father died thinking he was a failure. My mother lied to me my entire life. My wife betrayed me. How could it get worse? By becoming exactly what you thought your father was." I placed the old court documents on his desk. "He made mistakes, Wyatt. But he faced them. He confessed. That's what the suicide note really said, not what Evelyn told you." Wyatt's hands froze over the keyboard. "You're lying. Read it yourself. He wanted you to know the truth, but Evelyn, she thought she was protecting you." His shoulders started shaking. For a moment, I thought he was crying, but then I realized he was laughing, a broken, desperate sound. "All these years," he whispered. "All this planning. For nothing." "Not nothing." I moved closer. "You can still make this right. But you have to decide now, are you your father's son or your mother's?" Wyatt stared at the computer screen, then at his father's confession. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Whether police or ambulance, I couldn't tell. His finger hovered over the enter key. One click would complete the transfers, destroying countless lives, including his own. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly. "I know." I reached for his hand. "So don't." 6 months later, I stood in my new office at Carter Innovations, watching the spring rain wash away the last traces of winter. The view wasn't as impressive as the one from Wyatt's old office, but it was mine. My phone buzzed, a text from Sadie. Saw the news. "You okay?" The headline had broken this morning. Wyatt had accepted a plea deal, avoiding jail time in exchange for his testimony against the bigger players in the attempted takeover. He'd also agreed to pay back everything. "I'm fine," I texted back and meant it. A knock at my door made me turn. Leo stood there, holding a familiar-looking envelope. "This came for you," he said, handing it over. Security screened it. "It's safe." I recognized Wyatt's handwriting immediately. For a moment, I considered throwing it away unopened, but something made me pause. "He's moving to Seattle," Leo mentioned casually. "Starting over with a small consulting firm. Evelyn's not speaking to him." I nodded, running my finger along the envelope's edge. "And the company?" "Growing stronger. Thanks in large part to our new head of project development." He smiled. "Your father would have been proud, Clara." After Leo left, I finally opened the letter. It was short. "Clara, I found Dad's old journal. He wrote about wanting to confess everything, about hoping I'd understand someday. It took me losing everything to finally understand. You were right, I had a choice about who I wanted to be. I'm choosing now. Take care of yourself." A post-it note fell from the envelope, an old one, yellow with age. In unfamiliar handwriting. "The truth sets us free, but first it breaks us. Choose freedom anyway." Wyatt's father's words. The ones that led him to confess, to choose truth over pride. My computer pinged with a calendar reminder, dinner with Sadie. She'd been pushing me to try online dating, insisting it was time to get back out there. Maybe she was right, but first I had one more thing to do. I pulled up my email and started typing. Wyatt, thank you for the letter. Dad was right. The truth does break us. But we get to choose how we rebuild. Good luck in Seattle. Clara. I hit send, then gathered my things. Outside my office, the team was celebrating landing a major new client. Through the glass, I could see them laughing, planning, building something new together. The rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across my desk. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, not an ending this time, but just another sound in a city full of people starting over. I closed my office door and joined my team, ready for whatever came next.